question is not whether Australia has allies, but rather whether it has become over-reliant on them. For Sir Robert Menzies, Australia's security was dependent on having strong partnerships with nations that shared its interests. This belief shaped his government's decision to establish the ANZUS Treaty in 1951, creating a security relationship with the United States during a period of post-war uncertainty in the Pacific. However, more than 70 years later, the question Australia still faces is not whether this alliance is valuable, but rather whether this reliance has limited Australia's ability to act independently. The Australia-United States alliance remains in Australia's national interest, but Australia must avoid becoming overly dependent in order to protect its own independence. This matters because Australia's security in the Indo-Pacific is directly shaped by its relationship with the United States. For almost 3/4 of a century, this alliance has sheltered Australia. But here's the question. If you rely on an umbrella for too long, do you forget how to stand in the rain? The Australia-US alliance, yet again, remains in Australia's national interest because it provides security Australia would otherwise struggle to achieve alone. Since its creation under Sir Menzies through ANZUS, this alliance has been a key part of Australia's defence strategy. Today, agreements like AUKUS give Australia access to advanced military technology and nuclear-powered submarines that would otherwise take decades for Australia to develop. US force presence and intelligence sharing also strengthen Australia's ability to respond to regional challenges. What this means is simple. Australia is not alone in an increasingly uncertain region. Australia's relationship with the United States goes far beyond a simple alliance. The US alliance is built on long-term defense cooperation through ANZUS. Over time, Australia has become increasingly reliant on the US for intelligence, advanced military technology, and future submarine capability under AUKUS. This reliance is not a problem in itself, but the real risk is if Australia becomes so dependent that it stops building its own capability. Although Australia still makes its own decisions, relying heavily on another country's intelligence and military technology can naturally encourage Australia to align with the US strategic priorities. The Iraq War showed this connection, with Australia joining a US-led coalition in 2003. While Australia made its own decision, it demonstrated how closely our strategic choices can align with those of our closest ally. So the issue isn't that Australia loses its sovereignty. The issue is that without continuing to build its own capability, Australia's ability to act independently could gradually become more limited. The good news is that this isn't inevitable. Strategic dependence is a risk Australia can manage. So the key question now becomes, if the alliance is in Australia's national interest, how does Australia keep the benefits without becoming too dependent? The answer isn't to leave the alliance, but to use it to build Australia's own strength. Through AUKUS and intelligence sharing, Australia gains access to advanced technology, training, and information. The important part is what Australia does with that access. Rather than simply relying on allied capability, Australia should use it to build its own. This means investing in defence manufacturing, cybersecurity, and advanced technology so Australia can produce and maintain more of its own defence capability. The more Australia can develop and support itself, the less it needs to rely on others, especially on others for critical defence systems, while still benefiting from the alliance. As Australia builds its own capability, it becomes a stronger contributor to shared security rather than simply a receiver of it, which is exactly what Sir Robert Menzies' belief that Australia must be partners rather than passive dependents. Overall, the Australia-US alliance is within Australia's national interest. It has strengthened Australia's security while also creating some reliance on the United States. However, this reliance is not a dead end, rather an opportunity. Through that alliance, Australia gains the knowledge, the technology, and the cooperation needed to grow stronger over time. Ultimately, this alliance is the most valuable not when Australia depends on it completely, but when it helps Australia become a stronger and more equal partner, because an umbrella should protect you from the storm, but it should never stop you from learning how to walk in the rain.